The silent departure. The Galactic Assembly Hall stretched vast and imposing, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 distant stars. Representatives from 57 species filled the tiered seating, their bodies ranging from the towering silicon-based Korthax to the floating, luminescent Vellani. At the center podium stood Ambassador Marcus Chin, a human in his late 50s with silver-streaked hair and tired eyes that had seen too many disappointments. Marcus held a data slate in his weathered hands, preparing to present humanity's trade reform proposal for the 14th time in as many years. Around him, the ambient noise of the assembly continued without pause. The Vren delegation argued loudly with the Soltari over mining rights. The Thulian representative was absorbed in his personal device, completely ignoring the proceedings. Even the assembly chancellor, a dignified Korthax named Velrin, seemed more interested in the decorative patterns on the ceiling than the business at hand. Marcus cleared his throat and activated the translation matrix. His words would be converted into 56 different languages simultaneously, though he wondered if anyone would actually listen. The proposal he carried represented 18 months of work by humanity's finest economic minds. It outlined a fair resource distribution system that would benefit all council members while correcting the severe imbalances that had plagued galactic trade for centuries. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council 300 years ago, a young species full of hope and enthusiasm. They had offered their services freely, eager to prove themselves worthy of standing beside ancient civilizations that had traversed the stars for millennia. Human engineers had revolutionized infrastructure across dozens of worlds. Human doctors had eradicated diseases that had plagued alien populations for generations. Human negotiators had prevented wars and brokered peace between species that had been enemies for centuries. In return, humanity received scraps. They were given the smallest voice in council decisions. Their votes counted for 1/10 of what elder species received. Trade agreements consistently favored other civilizations, forcing humanity to sell resources at artificially low prices while paying premium rates for everything they imported. When humans raised concerns, they were told to be patient, to earn their place, to prove themselves worthy. 3 centuries had passed. Humanity had proven itself countless times over. Yet nothing changed. Marcus began his presentation, his voice steady despite the indifference surrounding him. He outlined the current trade deficit humanity faced, the mathematical proof of systematic discrimination, and a proposed solution that would actually benefit all parties involved. The data was irrefutable. The logic was sound. The benefits were clear. Councillor Draven, a reptilian Threxian with emerald scales and cold amber eyes, interrupted before Marcus reached his third slide. His voice dripped with condescension as it echoed through the translation system. Ambassador Chin, the Council has heard these complaints before. Humanity's economic concerns are noted, but we have more pressing matters to address. The Vellani food shortage requires immediate attention. Your proposal is denied. Again. Marcus felt something inside him finally break. Not with anger or frustration, but with a cold, crystalline clarity. He looked around the assembly hall, seeing the same dismissive expressions he had faced for his entire diplomatic career. The same expressions his predecessor had faced. And the one before that. He closed his data slate with a soft click that somehow seemed to echo in the vast chamber. I understand, Counselor, Marcus said quietly. Humanity will not trouble the Council further with such matters. Something in his tone made a few representatives glance up, but most had already moved on to the next agenda item. Marcus bowed formally, a gesture of respect that felt hollow after so many years of receiving none in return, and walked calmly toward the exit. Behind him, the Council continued its business, utterly unconcerned with his departure. Marcus made his way through the gleaming corridors of Council Station Harmony, past alien species conducting their daily affairs. He reached the human diplomatic wing, a modest section that seemed almost apologetic in its size compared to the sprawling complexes allocated to elder species. Inside, his staff waited. 23 humans who had dedicated their careers to galactic diplomacy. They looked at him expectantly, hoping perhaps this time had been different. Marcus shook his head. No words were necessary. His deputy, Ambassador Sarah Okonkwo, a sharp woman with dark skin and intelligent eyes, stepped forward. The others are waiting for your signal. Marcus pulled out a secure communication device, one that used quantum encryption far beyond what the Council's technology could intercept. He had often wondered if the elder species realized just how much humanity had held back, how much they had hidden while playing the role of eager students. He entered a 12-digit code and pressed send. The message was simple: Protocol Exodus. Initiate. Across the galaxy, in every system where humans worked, on every station where human expertise kept ancient machinery functioning, in every hospital where human doctors saved alien lives, in every command center where human tacticians advised alien militaries, the same message appeared on secure devices. The response was immediate and uniform. Human personnel began completing their current tasks with meticulous care. They filed final reports. They organized their documentation. They trained local replacements on basic procedures, though they knew those procedures barely scratched the surface of the knowledge required to maintain the systems they had built. There were no angry outbursts, no dramatic resignations, no speeches about injustice or demands for apology. Humans simply finished their work, packed their belongings and left. On the industrial world of Kevern Prime, Chief Engineer David Park shut down the fusion reactor monitoring system he had designed and maintained for 8 years. The Vren technicians he had trained watched as he transferred administrative access to them. They had their instruction manuals. They had observed him work countless times. They assumed they understood. David knew better. The manuals contained procedures for normal operation, but 90% of engineering was handling abnormal situations. Fusion reactors were temperamental. They required intuition, experience, and creative problem-solving. Things that could not be written in a manual. But that was no longer his concern. On Medical Station Sanctuary, Dr. Elena Rodriguez completed her final surgery, saving a Thulian child from a degenerative genetic condition. She had pioneered the treatment 5 years ago, combining human genetic therapy techniques with Thulian biochemistry in ways no one had thought possible. She trained the station's medical staff on the basic procedure, knowing full well that complications arose in 30% of cases, requiring modifications that demanded deep understanding of principles they had never bothered to learn. She left her office immaculate, her research files organized, and her credentials on the desk. On the contested border between Soltari and Kryn territories, mediator James Wilson concluded negotiations that had prevented war for the past 6 years. Both species had hot tempers and long memories. Their cultural differences made communication nearly impossible without someone who understood both perspectives. Wilson had spent years learning their histories, their values, their unspoken rules of diplomacy. He submitted his final report, noting that tensions remained high and recommending continued mediation. He did not mention that no one else possessed the cultural knowledge required to prevent the conflict from reigniting. That was no longer his responsibility. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. 12,000 human engineers, 8,000 human doctors, 4,000 human diplomats, 6,000 human scientists, 3,000 human military advisors, 22,000 human teachers, technicians, analysts, and specialists of every kind, all departing simultaneously. The council species barely noticed. Humans had been so reliable, so omnipresent, that they had become invisible. Like furniture or air conditioning, you only noticed when they stopped working. In the assembly hall, Councillor Draven was presenting his proposal for expanded mining operations in the Tertian asteroid belt. The vote passed easily. No one remembered that human surveyors had mapped that belt. No one considered that human safety engineers had designed the protocols that kept mining operations from becoming death traps. No one thought about who would maintain the extraction equipment or train new crews when the experienced workers left. On Council Station Harmony, the administrators processed departure requests from the Human Diplomatic Corps without question. It was unusual for an entire species delegation to leave at once, but the forms were properly filed. Everything was in order. 3 days later, Ambassador Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of the transport ship Unity, watching Council Station Harmony shrink into the distance. Around him, his entire diplomatic team shared the view in silence. "Do you think they will understand?" Sarah asked quietly. Marcus shook his head. "Not yet. Understanding requires consequences. They will learn, but it will cost them dearly. And if they ask us to return? They will. Eventually. When the systems start failing. When the trade routes collapse. When the wars reignite." Marcus turned away from the viewport. "And we will decline. Politely. Firmly. Finally. The Unity jumped to faster-than-light travel, joining a fleet of human ships all heading in the same direction. Home. Back to human space, where 300 years of knowledge, innovation, and expertise would finally be invested in humanity's own future rather than gifted to those who showed no gratitude. Behind them, the Galactic Council continued its business, unaware that the foundation upon which their civilization rested had just been quietly removed. In the maintenance section of Council Station Harmony, a cooling system began to fluctuate. It was a minor issue, the kind that human technicians fixed a dozen times per day. The replacement Vren technician consulted his manual, made the adjustment described in the basic procedures, and watched the fluctuation temporarily stabilize. He did not notice the underlying pressure imbalance that human engineers would have corrected immediately. He did not understand that the temporary fix was actually making the long-term problem worse. It was a small failure. Insignificant. The first of many. The price of arrogance. The first 3 months passed quietly. Too quietly. The Galactic Council continued its operations with barely a ripple to mark humanity's departure. Trade continued. Ships moved through established routes. Stations hummed with activity. To the casual observer, nothing had changed. But in the background, invisible cracks were spreading through the foundation of galactic civilization. On Kevran Prime, the fusion reactor that powered the planet's industrial sector began experiencing unexplained power fluctuations. Chief Technician Vrail, who had replaced David Park, stood in the control room surrounded by flashing warning indicators. He consulted the operations manual that Park had left behind, following each procedure exactly as written. The fluctuations continued. Then they worsened. Vrail called in 3 more technicians. Together they spent 18 hours trying every solution in the manual. Some problems temporarily improved. Others grew worse. The reactor's output dropped from 100% to 87%. Production quotas across the entire industrial sector began falling short. Vrail finally sent a message to Council Station Harmony, requesting assistance from human engineers. The response came back 3 days later, brief and formal. Humanity is currently unavailable for external consultation. Best wishes for your success. Vrail read the message twice, confusion mixing with the first stirrings of panic. Unavailable? What did that mean? Humans had always been available. Always ready to help. Always eager to solve problems. He had no way of knowing that his message had reached Earth, where it was reviewed by a committee and filed away without response. Humanity had more important concerns now. On Medical Station Sanctuary, Dr. Thuras faced a crisis that made reactor fluctuations seem trivial. A Thulian child, similar to the one Dr. Rodriguez had saved months earlier, lay dying from the same genetic condition. Thuras had the procedure Rodriguez had developed. He had watched her perform it twice. He had extensive notes. But this case presented complications. The child's genetic markers were slightly different. The standard treatment was not working. In her notes, Rodriguez had mentioned that 30% of cases required modifications, but she had not detailed what those modifications should be. There had not been enough time. Or perhaps she had known that understanding the modifications required years of study that the Thulian doctors had never pursued, too content to let human expertise handle the difficult cases. Thuras tried everything he could think of. He consulted with 6 other doctors. They debated for hours, trying different approaches, but they were working blind, lacking the fundamental understanding that Rodriguez had possessed. The child died 3 days later. Thuras sent an urgent message to Dr. Rodriguez, begging for guidance, offering substantial payment for consultation. The response came back automated and impersonal. Dr. Rodriguez is no longer accepting external cases. We recommend consulting available medical literature. Thuras stared at the message in disbelief. The medical literature existed because humans like Rodriguez had written it, but it could not replace the intuition and experience that came from actually understanding the work. On the Soltari-Kryn border, the situation deteriorated far more quickly. Without Mediator Wilson's careful management, old tensions resurfaced within weeks. A Soltari merchant ship strayed into disputed territory. Kryn patrol vessels intercepted it. Words were exchanged. Insults in one language that translated poorly into another. Within hours, 3 ships were destroyed. 57 beings were dead. The council dispatched mediator Threlix, a seasoned Villani diplomat, to calm the situation. Threlix arrived confident in his abilities. He had been mediating disputes for 200 years. How difficult could this be? Very difficult as it turned out. Threlix did not know that Soltari considered direct eye contact during negotiations an act of aggression. He did not know that Kryn count honor insults on a complex scale where the 7th insult in a series demands blood response, but the 6th can be forgiven. He did not know 1,000 other cultural nuances that Wilson had spent years learning. His mediation attempts insulted both sides. The skirmish escalated into a formal conflict. Fleets mobilized. Civilians evacuated border worlds. Within 3 months, the Soltari-Kryn War had claimed 14,000 lives. Across the galaxy, similar patterns emerged. Not catastrophic failures but a steady erosion of functionality. Systems that humans had maintained began breaking down. Procedures that humans had optimized became inefficient. Conflicts that humans had mediated reignited. The Council noticed, but not yet with alarm. These were manageable problems. Inconveniences. Nothing that should trouble an advanced galactic civilization. Then the cascade began. Trade Route Nexus 7 was a complex network of shipping lanes connecting 18 star systems. Human logistics specialists had designed it 40 years ago, using advanced algorithms that accounted for gravitational variations, traffic density, fuel efficiency, and political considerations. Ships moved through it smoothly, predictably, safely. The system required constant minor adjustments. Solar flares changed gravitational fields. Political situations altered which routes were safe. Traffic patterns shifted with economic changes. Human operators had made these adjustments automatically, often without the Council even knowing it was happening. Those operators were gone now. For 3 months, the automated system continued running on its last human program parameters. Then a solar storm hit System 4, creating gravitational anomalies that required route adjustments. The automated system did not know how to compensate. Ships continued using the old routes. Fuel consumption increased by 20%. Transit times grew longer. Collisions became more frequent. Trade Coordinator Selvix tried to reprogram the system. She had documentation. She had access codes. What she did not have was the deep mathematical understanding required to modify the algorithms without breaking them. Her first attempt rerouted all traffic through System 9, creating a massive bottleneck. Her second attempt accidentally deleted safety protocols, resulting in 3 ship collisions in 2 days. Her third attempt crashed the entire network. Trade Route Nexus 7, which had moved 60% of the galactic economy's goods, went offline for 11 days. Shortages appeared across multiple worlds. Prices skyrocketed. Businesses failed. The economic impact measured in trillions of credits. When the system finally came back online, it operated at barely 50% efficiency. The Council convened an emergency session. For the first time, representatives began connecting the dots between humanity's departure and the proliferating crises. Councillor Draven stood before the assembly, his emerald scales somehow seeming duller than usual. We must acknowledge the situation. Since humanity's withdrawal, we have experienced a 17% decline in industrial production, 12 major system failures, economic losses exceeding 9 trillion credits, and the outbreak of 4 separate military conflicts. This is not coincidence. You suggest we need the humans? Councillor Velrin asked, his massive Korthax frame shifting uncomfortably. We have functioned for 10,000 years before they arrived. Yes, but we have become dependent on their contributions, interjected Ambassador Silith, representing the Velani. They maintain systems we forgot how to operate ourselves. They solve problems we no longer knew how to approach. We let them carry weight we should have shared. The assembly erupted in argument. Some denied that humanity's absence mattered. Others proposed hiring human contractors at whatever price necessary. A few suggested that humans had deliberately sabotaged systems before leaving, though investigation found no evidence of this. The truth was simpler and more humbling. Humans had not sabotaged anything. They had simply stopped fixing everything. The Council voted to extend formal invitations to humanity, offering generous contracts for the return of human specialists. The offers were substantial, triple the previous compensation rates, along with promises of better treatment. Every offer received the same response: humanity appreciates your invitation but must respectfully decline. We are currently focused on internal development. We wish you success in your endeavors. Polite, formal, completely final. Frustration turned to anger in some quarters. Councillor Draven proposed a more forceful approach. The humans have a responsibility to the galactic community. We granted them access to our knowledge, our technology, our civilization. They owe us their expertise in return. The proposal gained support from species grown desperate as their world struggled with cascading failures. A military response was authorized, not to wage war, but to demonstrate serious intent. A fleet of 140 warships would proceed to human space and deliver an ultimatum: return and fulfill your obligations to galactic order or face consequences. Admiral Korthan, a decorated Threxian commander, led the fleet. He felt confident despite some unease about threatening a species that had always been peaceful. Humans had never demonstrated significant military capability. Their contributions had been civilian in nature. Engineering, medicine, science, diplomacy. They had military advisors, yes, but those advisors worked with other species forces. Humanity's own military remained largely unseen. Corthan assumed this meant they had no military worth mentioning. His fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the human border system, designated Threshold. Long-range sensors detected a single station of modest size, a few civilian vessels and scattered satellites. Nothing threatening. Corthan opened a communication channel, prepared to deliver his ultimatum. A human face appeared on his screen before he could speak. A woman with gray hair tied back, wearing a military uniform with 4 stars on the collar. Her expression was calm, almost bored. Admiral Corthan, this is Admiral Catherine Wu, Threshold Defense Command. You are in violation of human sovereign space. Please withdraw your fleet immediately. Corthan blinked, surprised by the direct approach. Admiral Wu, I carry the authority of the Galactic Council. Humanity has. We know why you are here, Wu interrupted. We tracked your fleet's approach for the past 6 hours. We know about the Council's ultimatum before you delivered it. Our answer is no. Corthan felt his scales flush with irritation. You cannot simply refuse. Look around you, Admiral. I command 140 warships. Your little station cannot. Wu raised one hand, cutting him off again. Admiral, I am going to give you a demonstration. Please observe your tactical displays. Corthan glanced at his tactical officer, who suddenly went rigid. Sir, I am detecting multiple new contacts. Dozens of them. No, hundreds. They were not there a moment ago. How is this possible? On Corthan's main display, the star system transformed. What had appeared empty now showed the truth. Weapons platforms positioned throughout the system, each one capable of destroying capital ships. Stealth vessels surrounding his fleet in a perfect sphere. Defense satellites revealing themselves to be military installations. And ships. Hundreds of human warships, sleek and angular with designs unlike anything in Council space. They had been there all along, completely invisible to the Council fleet sensors. Corthan's fleet of 140 warships was now inside a formation of over 400 human vessels. Every single Council ship had multiple targeting locks from multiple directions. How? Corthan whispered. We never knew you had this capability. Admiral Wu's expression remained unchanged. You never asked. You assumed we were weak because we chose peace. You confused restraint with inability. She leaned forward slightly. For 300 years we worked in your space using technology roughly equivalent to yours. Not because that was our limit, but because we saw no need to intimidate you. We came as friends. We stayed as helpers. We asked only for respect. She paused, letting her words sink in. You have 3 options, Admiral. First, you can attempt to fight. Your fleet will be destroyed in approximately 2 minutes with total casualties. We have run the simulations. The outcome is certain. Second, you can refuse to withdraw, maintaining your current position. We will disable your ships with electromagnetic pulse weapons and tow you back across the border. You will survive, but your humiliation will be absolute. Third, you can turn around right now and leave. We will not pursue. We will not fire. This confrontation will end here. Corthan stared at the tactical display, watching his certain defeat displayed in cold, mathematical clarity. His pride demanded he fight. His honor demanded he refuse to retreat. But his responsibility to the 140,000 crew members under his command demanded he face reality. If we withdraw, he said slowly, you will truly let us go? You have my word, Wu replied. Humanity does not want war with the Council. We simply want to be left alone. Leave now and tell your superiors that threatening us was a mistake. Corthan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of failure settling onto his shoulders. But failure with living crew members was better than honor with dead ones. All ships, he transmitted to his fleet. Prepare to withdraw. Full retreat back to Council space. As his fleet turned and began calculating jump coordinates, Wu spoke once more. Admiral, one more thing. Your sensor logs recorded everything that happened here. I recommend you share them with the Council. Let them see what we are actually capable of. Let them understand that we held back for 3 centuries because we chose to, not because we had to. The Council fleet jumped away, leaving human space as silently as they had entered it. Within hours, the sensor recordings spread across the entire Galactic Council. Every species saw the same thing. The mighty Council fleet, completely outmatched by humans who had been hiding their true capabilities for centuries. The realization hit like a cold wave. Humanity had never been the junior species needing Council guidance. They had been powerful all along, playing along with the Council's superiority complex while they built their own civilization in secret. And now they were gone. Not conquered. Not intimidated. Simply gone, taking with them 300 years of knowledge, expertise, and goodwill that the Council had thoughtlessly squandered. On Council Station Harmony, an emergency assembly convened. The mood was very different from 3 months ago. No dismissive arrogance remained. No casual confidence. Only growing fear as species finally understood what they had lost. Councillor Velrin addressed the assembly, his voice heavy with reluctant understanding. We must acknowledge the truth. We treated humanity as servants, not equals. We took their contributions for granted while denying them basic respect. They asked for partnership. We gave them exploitation. They asked for fairness. We gave them dismissal. He gestured to the data displays showing cascading failures across the galaxy. This is the cost of our arrogance. Humanity is not coming back. They have no reason to help us anymore. We must face the consequences of our choices and learn to stand on our own, as we should have done all along. The assembly sat in silence, finally understanding that some mistakes cannot be undone. Some departures are final. And some lessons are only learned through suffering the consequences of your own actions. Humanity had turned away not in anger but in dignity. And the galaxy was finally learning what it meant to stand without them.